Welcome to Design to Move, a weekly functional movement series reviewing common movement impairment syndromes, muscle imbalances, and injury cycles and how to correct for them. Don't just exercise, but restore optimal movement.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Design to Move. My name is Ryan Maxwell. We got Chad Trugar. We're both movement specialists here at Fluid Health and Fitness, and today we're going to go into excess kyphosis. Kyphotic posture is an excess haunching or rounding of the shoulders and the trunk. Chad's giving you a good description of this through his posture here, and that has a lot to do with how we sit during the day, and it does lead to issues down the road with major issues like bulging disc or herniations. Also impacts the quality of the shoulder mechanics, so that can lead to impingement cycles at the shoulder, and it can also impact the pelvis and the legs. So pretty important that we learn how to get that posture back to neutral. Today we're going to show you how to do that with a handful of exercises. Remember, we do have a blog on the topic. It's in the description below, so make sure to read up on that. We do have a condensed version in our timestamp here of the video, so if you want to skip to it after you've gone through it a couple times, go ahead and take a look at that. As always, we invite you all to participate in a free virtual movement screen. So if you want to have us take a look at your body, make sure to reach out to us at admin@fluidhealthandfitness.com. So we have a lot to get into today, so let's just go ahead and get right to it. We're going to start with mobility and release. This is our mobility and release segment. For today's video, we're going to show you how to reduce the pec major and minor as well as the biceps. All these muscles contribute to excess kyphotic posture. So you will need a lacrosse ball to do the releases, so make sure to grab that. Okay, we're going to start with the pec and the pec minor. Remember, the pec major is the bigger muscle group that lays superficially on top of the minor. The major attaches from the sternum, collarbone, across the ribs over to the humerus, and it allows the arm to come in into adduction, horizontal adduction. It also internally rotates the arm. So if it's tight, it has a tendency to pull the arms forward internally, and that can pull into the rotator cuff, and the shoulder becomes unstable, pulling the whole shoulder forward. So what we want to do is reduce that by using a soft tissue drill, a release drill. It's going to be self-massage using this little lacrosse ball. So Chad's going to place that into the belly of his muscle from the sternum over until he feels an adhesive point, or again, maybe a tension line, kind of like a spasm. Okay, and then he's going to put a gentle pressure there until he feels the muscle start to relax. Once the muscle starts to respond, it starts to soften or lengthen, he's then going to go into an active release by drawing his arm behind him. Now, main thing here, guys, is as you draw your arm back, we want to make sure that the arm doesn't internally rotate, or again, to start to internally or inferiorly drop down. So as you draw your arm back, make sure that it's not rolling in and starting to compress inward, reducing the space between the humerus and the shelf that it sits in. So he's going to place that ball right there on the pec. He's splitting his stance so that his lead leg is matching the arm that's being stretched. So the weight's back on his back leg. He's going to again apply gentle pressure by leaning into the wall, hold the pressure on the muscle until it becomes, again, relaxed. And then he's going to start to draw his arm back behind him, making sure that his arm internally rotates. And he's going to pull his arm back until he starts to feel his shoulder begin to want to internally rotate. Once he gets to the end cap of that range of motion, he's going to relax it, let his arm fall back down, and then sink into the belly of the muscle, and you should start to feel, again, a softening of the muscle so he can go deeper into the ball. So he's going to do that through multiple iterations. Now, as soon as we've opened up the pec major, we're going to get into the pec minor. Now, this little guy attaches from the shoulder, or again, from the scapula, down to the 3rd to 5th rib, and it pulls the scapula inward and down, inward and down. It also is an accessory respiratory muscle, meaning you use it to breathe. So we want to reduce that as well. So Chad's going to come off of the ball. We're going to show you where it begins. So it attaches at the coracoid process and then comes down into the 3rd to 5th rib. And then again, when it flexes, it can pull that arm internally. It's an anterior, internal rotator of the scapula. So I want to reduce that. So if I run my fingers medial to lateral, right under his collarbone, I can feel that little indentation where the muscle lays under the pec major. Okay, and you feel that, Chad?
Oh yeah, keep going.
Yeah, pretty good, right? So you're gonna put the ball right there, guys, and then in order to stretch this, instead of thinking about the arm moving in the joint, we're gonna move the whole shoulder back and down. Okay, so if you do that here, Chad, I'm gonna press on it and pull it down and back. You can feel that pretty easily, right? Now, because it attaches to the ribs, we want to make sure the ribs are nice and anchored. So you're going to breathe out, keep the rib cage down before you roll that shoulder back. And that's how you're going to set yourself up. So once again, same position as the pec major, only you're going to add a little more pressure into the minor right under the major. And again, the primary movement for the stretch after the passive release is the scapular retraction and depression, which incidentally is what we're going to be working on for serratus anterior. Okay. So again, we would wait for about 30 seconds till the muscle started to comply, started to relax. Then we would do that shoulder posterior glide and depress. Pull it back down and then relax. Pull it back down and then relax. So by getting through the pec major, changing the orientation of the ribs to the arm or the humerus, and then taking out the minor, which attaches the ribs to the scapula or the shoulder blade itself, we start to get those shoulders back around, the arms not so internally rotated, and we can start to begin to engage more of the rhomboids, the muscles that hold the shoulders back towards the spine, so you start to open up and get your posture back to neutral. Okay. Now once we've done that on the pec and the pec minor, we're going to get into the bicep. Now the bicep, a lot of people don't think about the bicep as a shoulder mover. You think more of it as a elbow flexor. Okay. Now the bicep, when tight though, it attaches up to the cavity of the shoulder itself, and it attaches to the scapula through, again, the attachment point through the long head. So what we're gonna do is recognize that if it's tight, and go ahead and make a bicep here, Chad. If I push down on it, and he has a lack of strength on the back retractors of the scapula, his shoulder's gonna roll forward. So a lot of times you'll see people in the gym when they do bicep curls, what do they look like? Shoulders roll forward when they do bicep curls. So they don't have a firm anchor point with the synergist to hold the shoulder back in its neutral position and everything moves forward. And if it's overly tight, biceps are pretty important for guys. We see this a lot. Women too, but you know, they're normally an area of emotional importance for a lot of guys. So because of that, they overdevelop them and you start seeing the where's the gym look, right? Right, so we want to reduce that. Where's the beach, right? We're gonna get those muscles to relax, get the shoulders back. So what we're gonna do to release it is a self-palpation drill, and I'll take the ball from you here, Chet. All you're gonna do is take your fingertips, and you get to do a pincer grip. You don't do this on a lot of muscles, but you're actually feeding and feeling into the bicep by using your index finger, middle finger, and your thumb, and you can start to knead the tissue. Now what you'll wanna do, and Chad's gonna give me his hand here, you're gonna wanna try to keep the arm passive. Passive means it's neither flexed or overly stretched. I'm supporting the weight of his arm where the bicep attaches so that when he relaxes his arm's gonna soften at the bicep. Chad's gonna try to let it soften. So just let the arm fall. There we go. So now it's soft. So now that we have this passive tone in the muscle, once again, we're gonna look for, again, adhesive tissue, or again, a tension line like a spasm in the muscle. We're gonna put some applied pressure there with your finger and your thumb. And you could do this on a bench or lay it on a bar or wherever, right? And then begin to, again, use your other hand and palpate the muscle. Once you find that tissue, and you go ahead and try it, Chet. You can push into it with your thumb or index finger. Find that pressure point. And then you're gonna hold it there for about 30 to 60 seconds. Once it relaxes, you're gonna begin to lengthen and extend through the elbow and rotate the wrist internally. So that's gonna floss the tissue or the bicep tissue through the pincer and then come back up and then rest it back up on a soft or on a surface so that, again, you're in a passive tone. You don't wanna be flexing your bicep, okay? You'll notice that as you bring it up to passive, your fingers will be able to get deeper into the muscle, and then you'll do it again, breathing again in, rotating the arm down. By breathing in, you're gonna lift through the ribs, your shoulder's gonna come back, you'll get a nice deep stretch, breathe out, come back to passive, let it rest, push down. Chad's very manly, he will not let go of his bicep, but again, you would normally let it go passive. He's having a hard time letting go. Okay. So either way, you would do that for about 6 to 10 iterations till the muscle gets softer, and then we would move into our next segment, activation. This brings us to the activation segment of today's video. Here's where we show you how to engage the underactive or developed muscles in the body responsible for appropriate movement quality. For today's topic, we're going to show you how to involve the anterior serratus. This is a muscle that protracts the shoulder, but also depresses and keeps the shoulder posteriorly glided on the rib cage so that we can open up the shoulder girdle. In order to do the exercise, you will need an exercise band and somewhere to anchor it to. So let's get right to it. So the muscle that we're going to try to target here is the serratus anterior. It's a muscle that protracts the scapula around the rib cage, so it glides transversely from back to front when you push your arm forward, but it also depresses the shoulder backward posteriorly, so it helps it to glide backward. Now that's important, as if we're overusing the pec and the bicep, everything rolls inward. It helps to pull the shoulders forward and it adjusts the actual attachment points at the cervical spine, pulling everything forward. So we want it to pull the shoulders back and down. So it's not just retraction, but depression. It's like the opposite of a shrug. So in order to engage the muscle, we're gonna get into like a punch stance. So you'll see boxers with really developed serratus muscles. They're kind of these finger-like muscles that wrap around the ribs. I always thought they looked pretty cool because they fed into your oblique, right? But functionally, they help the shoulder or keep the shoulder pretty stable. So Chad's in a split stance position, and you'll notice again he's on his right arm and he's making sure that his right and left hip bones are parallel to each other. The center of mass, or his weight, is on, or his base of support is on his left leg. So he's keeping his left leg weighted and his right leg is slightly up, so he's almost going into flexion on the right hip. Now that's important, as that's going to set his ribs up into a flexed position, holding that rib cage down. And that's going to tell the body that the shoulder is going to come forward into adduction, engaging the serratus. So he's going to breathe in, push the arm forward, gliding the shoulder blade around the rib, pushing the other arm back into extension. His palm is upright in a supine position. And then as he breathes out, he's going to flex his oblique and glide his shoulder back, again bringing his arm back into a neutral alignment, internally rotating the humerus as the shoulder glides back into its pocket. Okay. Now again, he's going to breathe in, supinate the palm, push away, really get the shoulder around the ribs. Opposite arm comes back, breathe out, and bring it back. A couple things that we're going to want to avoid or compensate for: if we see the hip start to rotate backward as we retract the arm back, it means normally that we're not engaging the oblique enough. We want to hold that rib nice and neutral. You can also keep the hip stable by flexing the glute on that opposite side, so the pelvis doesn't want to outsweep or abduct away. So once again, we would want to do about 2 sets of 20 repetitions. You'll notice that Chad is going nice and decisively into the contraction, and then a slow eccentric to about a 2 or 3 count down. You'll want to give yourself about a minute of time in between each of the sets, and you can do both sides of the body, help to restore the natural mechanics of the shoulder on the ribs. And that's it for activation. And that brings us to our integration segment for today's video. Here's where we show you how to engage multiple muscle groups through multiple joint segments in the way that the body is supposed to sequence these muscle firing patterns. To do that for today's topic, we're going to use 2 exercise bands. We are going to use a heel cuff to help support the ankle so we can get a longer lever through the leg. You don't necessarily need that, but either way, we'll show you how to do it with both. And if you do have access to a heel cuff, that would be the best option. So let's get to it. So the integration movement that we're going to do today is a split stance position where we're going to do a one side shoulder extension with an extension on the opposite side using dynamic tension using bands. Now what this is going to replicate again is the basic gait cycle like we do pretty much every video, but what we want to do is start to add additional tension to the mechanism, and we want to be aware of where our base of support is around our hips and our ribs. So I'm going to be in a split stance position, putting my weight into my right leg. That's going to again compress the leg. Now I am going to pull my opposite leg back into extension, flexing the glute against dynamic tension from the band. Now at the same time, the arm on the opposite side of the body is going to go back into extension. And we talked about the opening up of the pec girdle and again the bicep so that we can get more range of motion of the shoulders around the rib cage. If the pec and bicep are too tight, it's going to grab the sternum and rotate me with it. Okay? I don't want that to happen. I want the support to happen through my hips by engaging my glute on the opposite hemisphere, the oblique on this opposite hemisphere, and then I'm going to anchor my shoulder and glide it around a fixed thoracic canister. So my trunk is stable and I'm gliding the shoulder blade around the rib, opening up through that pectoral girdle. Now at the same time, what we're going to avoid is the flexion or the internal rotation of the shoulder. That's the common compensation or substitution pattern. So you'll see people as they walk, when they come through, their arm rolls in and internally, And you'll see that with rows or again with push-ups or any other number of exercises involving the shoulder joint. So Chad's gonna show you how it looks. Again, we talked about that foot cuff or ankle cuff helping you with this. The band is anchored down at the ground for his leg. So if you don't have an ankle cuff, what we can do is just use an exercise band and tie it off. What I'll do is just attach 2 different knots, or apply 2 different knots, one for the cuff itself, and then just about 2 inches up, I'm gonna do another knot so that I can slip this over the roof of my foot. So that's gonna add quite a bit more tension as it's gonna reduce the length of the band. So you're gonna have to be careful of that. But if we have Chad come up here, I'm gonna slide that over his heel, and then I'm gonna bring this top one right over the tip of his toe. And by doing that, it's gonna hold that basically as a makeshift cuff. So he's gonna probably wanna come in a little bit closer so that he has more slack in the band. He's gonna kick his leg back, his left leg into extension. You'll notice that his hip doesn't outsweep or abduct out, so the pelvis is internally rotated a little bit. He's stabilizing by using his glute on the left side. He's got a nice upright vertical posture so that his head is in line with his ribs, and his ribs are stacked right over his pelvis. And then he's gonna crunch down through his opposite oblique left side, anchor the ribs down, and then pull the arm back behind him on the right side into extension with scapular adduction. And as you notice, again, that left arm goes right back to our activation movement, the anterior serratus press, okay? Put it all together. He's breathing in as he pulls the arm forward and then breathes out as he comes back. So he's breathing in as he reaches and then breathes out as he comes back. All the while, you'll notice that his ribs aren't rotating out or in, his pelvis isn't rotating out or in, maintaining a nice neutral base of support and gliding the appendages around the ribs. The idea is maintain a neutral alignment through the posture and move through the shoulders. Now, as you get more comfortable with this, you can start to move through the leg. So as you release, you'll bring the left leg forward with the right arm. So Chad can step forward into his left leg. So he's gonna draw his left leg forward. Remember, we're looking for compensations here. We don't want that hip to rotate outward. If he's contracting his glute and his oblique on that same hemisphere, everything will be nice and neutral. We're looking for the protraction of the left shoulder as he pushes forward. We're looking for the retraction, depression of the right shoulder as he pulls back. And one more time, nice vertical center of mass, the head in line with the trunk and the pelvis. Good job. So we would want to do about 2 sets of 20 repetitions. Give yourself again a minute of time in between. You'll notice that he again did a nice strong contraction, and then the eccentric or the release was nice and controlled. You'd give yourself again 2 on both sides of the body. And again, if you fatigue prematurely, either reduce the movement, reduce the band tension, or again, cut the volume. Just make sure that this is perfect, because if we're gonna try to upregulate your nervous system to be more efficient, you don't wanna do a compensation mechanism and cement that into your body. Okay, so make sure to do it perfect or not at all. Okay, if you have any core questions on that, make sure to reach out to us, admin@fluidhealthandfitness.com. Let's get into the next one. Our last segment is strength. Here's where we show you how to develop the muscles that need to be stiffer in the body. When you train a muscle, normally it becomes stronger, but it also becomes stiffer relatively. So the tension of the muscle is greater when it's in a passive elongation. That's gonna help to hold the joint centers that it attaches to back in their natural alignment. So today we're gonna show you how to get those shoulders back by engaging the rhomboids and lower mid-trapezius using an exercise band. You will need a place to anchor that to, up about the height of your head or a little bit higher. And again, enough space to bring your arms behind you. So this is an upright cobra position. Let's get to it. For our last movement, we're gonna do an upright cobra position using a band. Now what that requires is that we have the band anchored about the eye line. We're gonna draw the arms behind the torso around a fixed rib cage. That's called scapular thoracic glide. So essentially the shoulders are going around a fixed column. Now in order to do that, I'm gonna need to engage my abdominals and depress the ribs downward, hold the ribs down. I'm gonna breathe in despite the pressure of my intrathoracic pressure of the breath in. My abs aren't going to hyperextend. We wanna still maintain a neutral alignment. So as I draw my breath in, I'm gonna tuck my chin, draw my weight back over my ribs, pull my arms around the rib cage, and pull them to that first point of resistance where the shoulder is gonna wanna shrug or internally rotate. Now that's the money right there. If you go further than that, you're gonna reinforce the negative relationships, and it's gonna defeat the purpose of this whole thing. So Chad's gonna show you how to do it. He's getting in front of the band. His feet are shoulder width or just slightly tucked inside of that shoulder width position, nice and neutral. Again, he's maintaining his vertical center of gravity, head in line with the AC joint, hip bone, and ankle. He's gonna keep his knees somewhat bent, just a little soft bend. He's gonna breathe in and draw the shoulders around the scapula or around the rib cage. Now as he does it, he's not gonna let his shoulders rotate inward. He's gonna breathe out and slowly let the weight come back or the band tension come back. So what we're not gonna do is release the tension the whole time. He's gonna make sure that he keeps the arms under compression the entire time, and the ribs are gonna feel this through the abdominals here and back here in the extensors. As he breathes in, he's gonna draw the shoulders back. He's gonna feel the muscles pull the scapula back towards the middle of the spine, and then the shoulders are gonna come in the cavity for the ride and pull back behind him. Once again, we're shooting for about 10. Once again, we're shooting for about 2 sets of 20 repetitions. He's gonna wanna try to pull that arm back nice and tight. Hold it there and then open up, time under tension, about 2 to 3 seconds open, not fully flexing the arms horizontally the whole time. And then again, a minute in between each set. So that brings us to the end of today's video. Thank you again for joining us. We hope you got some information about your body. One more time, we did talk about kyphotic posture. Basically, this means that the spinal curvature of your thoracic spine is too great. So it rounds forward, it becomes hyperkyphotic, or again, haunched around it. Now we see that all the time because of everyday postures, positions with occupational overload, sitting at a desk, etc., etc. And again, we talked about the shoulder girdle as a contributing factor in that posture. There are other contributing factors like your hamstrings, your calf musculature, lack of core strength, lots of other things to consider. So if you want more information about your own body and you'd like to have a free virtual consultation, make sure to reach out to us at admin@fluidhealthandfitness.com. Love to talk to you more about it. We do also have a blog and topic below, so make sure to read that. It's in the description. And we just want to make sure you guys know that we are beginning to produce a podcast where we're going to give you more information about functional biomechanics, kinesiology, the body's physiology, the metabolism, bioenergetics, energy systems, all sorts of fun information, great information to keep you healthy, keep you moving, keep you engaging in your everyday life. So make sure to look out for that. On that, thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next week for another episode of Design to Move. Remember, your body is designed to move, so stay in motion. We'll see you soon.